morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. We are going to go through going paperless and using TransactionDesk forms to create your transactions from anywhere. And we're going to talk about Authentisign 2.0, how your clients can sign their forms with their fingertips on their phone, on their laptop, on a tablet. So I'm going to show you also some of the new features in Authentisign 2.0. First and foremost, my name is Colleen Delange. I teach this class because I am on staff at MiRealSource and teach for many of the associations. A little bit about why I teach this class in general is I've worked at many forms companies, and I've also been an agent myself for over 22 years. So my goal today is really to show you some time-saving tips and techniques that are going to help you quickly and easily write contracts from anywhere. We're going to cover how you can sync this on your phone. So if you're an iPhone user, you can download the app. If you're an Android user, it gives you more of a web option. But I'm going to show you all of that today, how to sync it. So if you make a change on your phone, it automatically syncs with your TransactionDesk account so that that information is always current. And I'm going to show you what's new with Authentisign 2.0. They made some great changes to their UI, their user interface, if you will. And I think you'll like how much faster, how much more efficient, and how much easier it is for the clients to use as well. All right, so let's start off with some of the changes in Authentisign. I'm going to actually start there, and I'm going to turn my fuzzy distracting hair off today with all this rain. I got up looking just like a Q-tip, so I'm going to turn that off and get right into the good stuff. I'm going to let you see what's new in Authentisign 2.0. We're going to talk about what changes they've made, what you can expect. So Authentisign about 8 months ago got a complete overhaul as far as the UI. What it allows you to do now that you couldn't do before was edit a signer's name in process. So when I've done this as an agent, unfortunately, I sent out docs, and let's say your client's name is Joe Schmagegi, and you spelled Joe Schmagegi wrong, and now you need to change it. You don't want to have to start all over. So what you can do is you can go right into the contacts. You can change that signing name in real time so that it appears correct when they go to open it. You can also add signers, you can add CCs on the go. Your forms and documents and transactions are still going to sync the great way they did before, but it's even easier to drag and drop documents directly into the envelope for signing. One of my favorite features that used to kind of drive me crazy, to be honest, is if you are working with an attorney. So kind of let me give you the example of where you would use this. Let's say you're working with an attorney. Previously, if the attorney wanted to review the documents ahead of their client signing it, you would have to send it over to the attorney in a reviewer role where it would ask them to acknowledge and accept or acknowledge and reject the document. But let's say that they weren't happy with the terms or they wanted to move out the closing date, something like that. They would hit reject and it would come back to you, the agent, and basically it stops it in process. So it basically stops the flow. It can't go to the next person. And now I, the agent, have to actually pick up the phone, call the attorney and say, hey, you know, why are you stopping the documents from going to the buyer for the signature? Then I would have to wait for them generally to call me back and then recreate that change and start all over again. It was kind of a nightmare. So what you can actually do now is you can actually send it to the reviewer. The reviewer, if for some reason they decide to reject it, they can actually put why they're rejecting it. There's a drop down and then there's also a note section. So they could say maybe the closing date's wrong, or maybe Joe Schmagegi's name is spelled wrong, or maybe it's a trust and they want it updated. You can do all of that, but it allows them to communicate with you without having to reach out, call them, wait for them to call you back to make those changes. I thought that was a really good change that they added. The UI has a simpler interface and it's actually going to open up to the size of their screen. So I'm going to jump back just a couple slides because I know I missed a couple here. So basically the changes that we discussed, you can edit a name in real time. You can add signers, so you can quickly add signers right from the main page. Everything is on one easy to see screen. Also, you can add docs by dragging and dropping them onto the interface. And then the feedback option. And we're going to look at all of those. So we only missed about one screen, so don't worry. But thank you for letting me know, Jody. I appreciate it. All right, so from here, everything is laid out. Instead of using that kind of cumbersome wizard, it now is all laid out onto one screen. So you don't have to expand the panel and then go into the forms and expand the next panel and then go in. You can actually do everything from one convenient screen now. So it's really streamlined the whole process of sending. And we're going to do all of this step by step today, so don't worry. And again, it's faster than ever. It used to sometimes hang up and you'd see it would load. You'd get, I called it the slow moving wheel of death. I know that's not really, but it would load and load and load for documents, especially if they were larger documents. The new Authentisign 2.0 is 60% faster. So that means it's going to go much quicker, and it uses high definition documents. So what that means is sometimes if you were taking a PDF, like I have a scanner behind me, and so if I was scanning in an offer, not only would it take a long time to load, but sometimes it would be kind of grainy. And if you're trying to counter that offer and move those tags onto the documents, sometimes it was really hard to see some of those changes that you were making. I'm happy to say that now, thanks to the high resolution documents, it's going to be faster and much clearer when you're looking at those documents. All right, and then of course it's going to know what device to scale. Now this was a problem I did find in the previous version. If a client had their resolution blown up on their phone, so seeing how you can kind of zoom in on your phone, make things a little larger and easier to see. Sometimes if a client were signing on their phone and they had their resolution set very high, then when they were signing, a lot of times where it said complete your signature was kind of just off their phone screen. And sometimes they didn't see it. So they thought they completed the signature, but it actually wasn't done. There was one more complete button. So now I'm happy to say that it actually opens up to the appropriate resolution size for their phone. So that does not happen. So you don't get that miss where that box is down here and they don't see it, because that had happened to me several times as well. Okay, so here's that feedback that we discussed. Here's kind of a picture of it. So if you are using that attorney role or someone rejects to sign something, you now have a drop down with a couple different popular options to choose from, or they can type in that notes section what is actually the problem with the document, or again, if the attorney wants the closing date pushed out. This is just an easy way for them to tell you that. All right, so I'm kind of a live person. It's great, PowerPoints are wonderful, but I want to see how does it work live. So our goal today is to show you some time-saving tips and techniques. We're going to start, I kind of like to start A to Z, if you will. Show me how to do all the way from A all the way to Z, and so that's really what we're going to do. We're going to ask you today to play a couple different roles, though. The first role that you're going to play is obviously the agent that's setting it up. We're going to go through an entire buy side, an entire list side, and then we're going to practice signing the documents. Okay, so you're going to wear a couple different hats today. Where we're going to start off is, let's actually start off with the purchase side today. So let's say, and I'm going to use Jody because she's been so kind on our call. Let's say Jody just showed this beautiful lakeshore property. And I'm going to use this instead of my listing because it's a heck of a lot nicer. I never am lucky enough to get in the $3 million price range. So we'll use my good friend Tom Lipinski's today. So I'm going to say that Jody just showed this property to her buyer. Buyer loves it, and Jody's ready to write the offer. Well, the last thing in the world Jody wants to do is go into a forms program and re-enter all the information that's sitting right here on this page, right? So the thing to remember when you're using TransactionDesk, and if you remember this, I promise the rest will be pretty easy. Remember in TransactionDesk, if you are starting on the buy side, you're pretty much always, unless it's a for sale by owner, you're going to pretty much always start from the MLS because you found the property, you've showed the property. Now you want to take all the information for the property, who has it listed, what brokerage they're with, what's their license ID, what's their email and cell phone number, what is the school district, what is the tax ID. You want to take all that that's already entered somewhere and just kind of pull it into your form so you don't have to recreate the wheel. This will allow you to really fill out 5 or 6 pieces of important information and send your documents out for signature. So let's actually walk through that process. So Jody just showed my good friend Tom Lipinski's listing here. Jody says, okay, let's write it up. Jody wants to use the easy button. The easy button is really what takes all this great information and throws it into TransactionDesk for us. So what we want to do is the easy button, by the way, is really the TransactionDesk icon. It's hard to tell that though, at least for me. The easy button kind of looks like a blue tidal wave or a blue splash in my opinion. But when you run your mouse over it, it will say start a transaction. So we're going to click that button, and that's when it's going to pull all that information that's already attached to the listing directly into our listing package. Now, the first time-saving tip and technique, other than the easy button I just showed you, is having your packages set up, having your listing package set up, your sales package, a lease package. If you're with a larger brokerage, you probably already have those packages created. If you, let's just say you're maybe with a smaller brokerage and no one's done that for you yet, you can still create your own packages, but that really is the key. It's kind of like, we run into our offices. It's almost when I get to work at home and I can just grab stuff. When you run into the office and you grab that deal file, right? You grab it out of the drawer and you find you have all the forms you need in your listing package or your sales package. Unfortunately, if you're like me, what I used to do is I'd go in and we grab these packages and we actually throw them in the back of our car. And then, you go to grab one because you forget a form or you forget a document, and now they're all super old and they're not even the forms that you use anymore, right? So that's kind of the beauty of online forms, is that you're able to take those forms and always have the most current version of the form, but you do want to make sure that you've put your packet together. So again, it's a great idea to have a listing packet, a sales packet, a lease packet, and if your brokerage hasn't actually created those packages for you, I'm going to show you how to do that today too. All right, so I'm going to turn off my camera here so you can see more of the screen. All right, so at this point, I've now done the easy button, right? And I know a couple people just joined us. So if you are looking for the easy button, remember on the buy side, you're always looking for that blue splash where it says start a transaction. That's going to pull all that data over into TransactionDesk for you. But now I want to apply that packet, my listing packet or my sales packet. So obviously, if we're on the buy side, I'm just going to attach my company listing or my company sales package. So again, these are just a few examples that my company has set up, but you could really create your own. If you're doing a particular niche type of business, you could set up a package that's best for your business. And I'm going to show you again how we can do that step by step. So I'm going to apply my buyer package, and you can see it's already starting to pull the information over from the MLS. Lastly, I want to tell it, who am I representing? So obviously, if you were listing a property, you'd be the listing agent or the selling agent in this case. So if Jody is writing a purchase agreement, she's going to be the selling agent. If it's a transaction coordinator situation, obviously maybe neither because you're a transaction coordinator, or if you're double dipping the property, obviously both. So for our example today, I'm going to say that we are just going to be the selling agent. And I want to start off with my wizard. Now, I'm going to be totally honest with you. I, as an agent, do not want to use a wizard every single time. So the first couple times, if you haven't used TransactionDesk or Authentisign, the wizards are great because they'll kind of show you where everything is. However, I'm going to show you a quick tip today where you can put all the things in the wizard on one convenient dashboard and you can do everything from one screen. It really makes it so much more efficient than trying to go through the wizard every single time. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hit that create button, and it's going to start auto-populating the details from Tom's listing in the MLS. Because what we want to do is, instead of filling out those 30 additional fields of information, I simply want to pull them over from the MLS. And I want to go through and add in just the key pieces that would be important on the buy side. So let's actually take a look at that next. So in your wizard, you can see it's already started to carry over the street address, the city, the county, the state, the zip code, the subdivision, MLS comments, legal description. You can see how much information is already coming over. So really, if you are doing a real life purchase scenario, one of the things that it can't auto-populate is what is your buyer willing to pay, right? That's in your buyer's head, so there's nowhere to auto-populate that from. So we are going to scroll down and we're going to find the listing information is here. So here's our list price and then the purchase information. Now, here's where you kind of have to think of this wizard as generic. So basically, whether you're listing the property or selling the property, the fields are the same. They're both, it's generic. But if you're on the purchase side, then obviously that's the information you're going to go and fill in. So in this case, we're going to say this buyer is going to offer, I wish I could get in that price range, but he's going to offer $3 million. Maybe his earnest deposit's going to be $50,000, whatever it happens to be. So you're going to fill that information in here. But the more information you fill into the wizard means the less information you have to fill out on the individual form. So I try to fill as much into the wizard as possible. But here's your second tip, if you will. If you scroll down a little bit, like for my particular company, we have 3 places that it asks what you want to include in the property. So we have a section on the purchase agreement. We have a section on the addendum, which talks about what appliances they want to leave, what level are the appliances on in case they want a freezer in the basement, things like that. And then we have a third part of an addendum where it talks about what you're including in the sale. So where it says property includes, even though this is kind of under the listing information, I want to add in what I'm asking for. So if I'm asking for the stove and the built-in microwave and the washer and dryer, I want to add that here. Because if I add it here, it's going to carry over to all 3 places on my forms where it's going to ask me what appliances I want to include. Same thing with exclusions. If you are excluding the pool or you're excluding, the play structure in the backyard, you want it removed ahead of time. If you add that here on your purchase agreement and other forms that it's asking for exclusions, this is where you could actually add that in so it carries over. So really, in most cases, we want to put in what we're asking for, and we want to put in our offer price and what our EMD is. Now I'm just going to hit next, and it's going to take me to step 2 of the wizard. This is where we're going to add in our dates. Now, I'm going to actually just say, I'm going to do this class kind of middle of the road. I know some people are brand new in the industry. They're just learning Transaction Desk. And there's other people who are on teams and they're, bringing in leads and they're using a lot of different tools to try to stay connected. So keep in mind, if you're just joining us and you're just getting familiar with this program, I'm going to show you a couple more advanced options too. You don't have to use everything. You can just use the basics if that's all you're looking for. But there are some cool things that for me, because I teach full-time for the MLS and I still continue to sell, there are some things that have helped me automate the process. And so I'm going to cover some of those. But really, step 2 just really talks about the dates. So I'm going to say that our offer date, if I click in, here's our offer date. I'm going to say we're writing that offer today. And our acceptance date, we're going to say we're going to give them until Friday and what time, how long till we want them to apply for a mortgage or get a mortgage commitment. So you can put all of that in here. Now, if you're a beginner user and you're just getting familiar with this, again, you don't have to do this step. However, I really like to show people because for me, it just saves me a lot of headaches so that I don't forget important steps in the transaction. So if you are, especially if you're on a team, or if you are trying to automate your selling process, you can create what they call tasks. Okay, so right now I could just keep going through the wizard and filling out the forms just traditionally. But what if I want to automate it? Or what if I want someone on my team to put up my sign or install my lockbox? Or I want my office admin to add in the listing. All of those things can be automated by going over to the right and using tasks or checklists. Now, tasks are just assigned tasks that send you email reminders. The checklists are just a group of tasks that you want applied to any transaction. Okay, so let's start off with a task. So let's say, and I just want to kind of show you how tasks work. Again, you don't have to use it if you're just getting started. I just like people to know because for me, it saved me a few steps. So I'm going to say, I want to go ahead and I want to add a task to my listing or to my sale. And we'll just do a nice easy one. Like maybe I want to install a sign, and maybe someone on my team is in charge of putting up our signs. Now, really, if you have a team, by the way, you can add your team members here and you can share these tasks with your team, but I want to automate it. So really in real estate, there's not very much that's due on a specific date, right? I mean, most things are related to either a task being completed or something in the transaction. And what I mean is, we're not going to order a final water read, right, if we failed inspection and we're not going to complete the sale, right? So there are things that trigger that we're going forward. So in this case, I'm going to say that we're going to relate this to a transaction date. So I want to install the sign one day after the listing agreement date, so the list date. Do I want a reminder? I'm going to say, yep, I want it. So when I put my listing in, when I put my listing date in, the next day, it's going to send that reminder to that person. Let's say Colleen's going to put up the sign. I'm going to send the reminder to that person. They get that notification that I listed a property and the sign needs to be installed. Now, of course, you could do that with anything. Where I actually do this the most, to be totally honest, I get all wrapped up in teaching and I'm on the road a lot. A lot of times I'm traveling, downriver, or I'm going up north to teach. And a lot of times I just forget to either remind the seller about the final water read, or most of the times I try to actually schedule that myself. But I forget because now we're 3 days away from closing and I'm trying to get everything in line. So I just set an automated reminder to remind me 5 days before the closing date that I need to order that water read. So those are nice, easy reminders. If you're missing a step or you're trying to automate it, then doing something like a task can be extremely helpful. Okay, so I'm going to jump back. And again, you don't have to do that. It's kind of hidden in here. And I found that for me, it saved me a couple times now. So hopefully if you are on a team or you're a little more familiar with TransactionDesk, that might be something you want to take a look at. If you have any questions about setting up tasks, you're more than welcome to reach out directly to me. I am recording this class, so you can go back to our YouTube channel and you can watch this specific class anytime you need a refresher. The thing about why I decided to start recording our classes was, as an agent, we don't write a purchase agreement every day, right? Sometimes you might not write one for 30 or 60 days. So then you're like, okay, what'd that lady with the fuzzy hair say again? How do I get started? Where's that easy button? So I'm going to give you some cheat sheets today. I'm also going to give you that class that you can go back to at any time so that you can kind of watch this. If you don't write a purchase agreement for 60 or 90 days, you still have a great resource you can go to. All right, so let's jump over to step 3. If you did that process correctly that I showed you, starting with the easy button, we can see who is now the contacts in this transaction. So I can see Tom Lipinski listed that beautiful property. I can see his brokerage. And then if Jody's writing this, she's going to see her name and her brokerage. In this case, it's me and my brokerage. So the idea is that step has already been done for you. This is probably the most popular call I get when I help out with tech support. It's, well, Colleen, that's great, but I had to go in and add Joe Schmagegi, the buyer, in 3 times. And it's because you're missing this one step. You want to add all your contacts right here, because if you add them right on this screen, it's going to do a whole bunch for you. It's not only going to fill out the name underneath the signature line, but it's going to auto tag them in Authentisign for you. So what that means is it's actually going to place the tags where the buyer and seller should sign for you if you do this step right. So you're going to click on Add, and pretty much all through TransactionDesk, by the way. Anytime you're starting an action, you're really just looking for the Add button. In this case, we're going to add a transaction contact. So if you've worked with that person before, you can add an existing contact. You can add from your Google contacts. You can add yourself, but we already did that for you. So really what we want to do in this case is create a new transaction contact, or from scratch, if you will. I'm going to click on that, and the most important thing that I want to fill out here is who is this person. So if they are a buyer, I want to label them as the buyer so it knows where to put their signature line, where they're going to be signing, and it's going to put those tags on there for you. So in this case, we're going to call this Billy Buyer, and obviously we're going to put in Billy Buyer's email address because we want to maybe send documents out for signature. I'm going to put in mine. Just so you can see the signing process too. So I'm going to show you the examples of how they sign. Normally in most of my buyers, and you could add their address and further details, but most of my buyers just consist of a first name, last name, and an email address. That's where I stop. However, there are 3 additional fields that you may not use every time, but there's going to be someday, I promise you, you're going to go, oh, that lady with the fuzzy hair, she just saved me from not being able to use this. What I mean is the preferred signature and legal name are mostly in the cases if you are doing a power of attorney, maybe a trust, maybe they're buying it in the name of the corporation. So in this case, if Billy Buyer is just signing as Billy Buyer, he's buying it for himself, no big deal, right? But what if Billy Buyer needs to be spelled out differently? Like the attorney says, Billy Buyer, POA for Sally Smith. What if I need to have that according to the attorney? Then I'm going to type that into the legal name. The contact is still Billy Buyer, but he's going to be signing in a different way, or you want the name represented down below the signature line to read differently. So if that's the case, then I probably want the signature and legal name underneath that signature line to read something different. So 90% of us are probably not going to use that very often, but one day, the time you have that power of attorney or you have that, buying in the name of a corporation, it'll come in handy. In this case, we're going to keep it kind of basic today, so we're just going to save Billy Buyer, and or Billy Buyer, I'm sorry. And of course, if they have a spouse, you're going to add them in separately because they're never going to sign Billy and Sally Buyer, right? They're always going to sign Billy Buyer and Sally Buyer. So they're each going to need separate signature lines. So again, if we were adding in the spouse, we would simply do that process again, and we would put in that spouse's name. Okay, so that's pretty much step 3. Let's jump over to step 4. Because I applied my buy-side packet or my selling agent packet, this would mean that my forms already dropped into place, so I don't have to go and find forms. Now, if you've gotten to this step and you're like, oh, you know what, I don't have any forms here, don't worry, I'm going to help you set those packages up today, but I do want to show you how you can find a form that may not be in your package. So let's go over here to the Add button, because again, we're going to do an action, so we're simply looking for that Add button. And the first thing we want to do, because in my opinion, they give you access to so many forms. I mean, it's almost overwhelming. Like if I go into, I'm a member of Grosse Pointe, if I click on the Grosse Pointe forms, you can see each library just has dozens and dozens of forms to choose from. I kind of find that a little bit overwhelming. So if you are looking for a particular form, let's say you just sold a house with a pool and you want a pool addendum, you can actually go right to this search field, and immediately I can see all of my pool addendums. If I'm looking for the one for my company, I'm going to simply select it and add it in. Okay, so really easy to add additional forms. Let's do that once more. I'm going to click on Add. You could go to the particular library if you don't know what the form is named, but if you're looking for something simple like an FHA addendum or something like that, type the keyword in and it's just going to show you all of those things, and then you can select the form you're looking for. All right, so what happens if you want to put these forms in a specific order? If you create your templates in the order you want them, that's how they'll be displayed. But for me, and I guess I'm kind of old school, I was always told that your agency, because I was a big Marge Fraser fan, if anybody knows who she was amazing. She had a saying, if you look like a duck, you better walk like a duck and talk like a duck. And anyway, and you better be a duck. And she would talk about license law like that. And it just stuck with you. She was just very charismatic. Anyway, I was always taught that you should have your disclosure of agency as the first form that they see. So if you want to simply grab the picture of the form, if you will, and move that to the top, you can drag and drop them into any order that you want. Now, sometimes there will be a form that, might have a very similar name, and you kind of want to do a form preview. You want to see, is that the form I'm actually looking for? You can go over to the right-hand side. You can do the form preview, and you can take a look at that particular form. Okay, we're going to talk about this more too when we get into countering. I'm going to show you how to actually take a paper form and how you can turn that into a professional looking counter offer. So we're going to talk about that too. So again, easy to add forms in, easy to rearrange those forms. If you made a mistake, you added the wrong form, you can go ahead and delete it. So pretty easy and self-explanatory. Now, I'm going to be honest, this part, when I first got into TransactionDesk, this confused me so much. So step 4 is forms. These would be the fillable forms that TransactionDesk has all set up for you, that either your brokerage has or your association has or your MLS has. So when I got to step 5, and it's a documents, I thought, that's really confusing. I kind of always thought a form was a document, but let me explain the difference. So step 4 is the fillable forms, again, that you can go in and you can fill out the information and it's going to auto-populate. Step 5, when it's talking about documents, is those documents that are outside of what's there. So some examples. If you have, let's say, a copy of your EMD or a pre-approval, or maybe you've got pre-title on a house and you want to bring that in to be part of your transaction file, you can do that quickly and easily. But we did something really cool here, so I want to point this out. It used to be that if you wanted your buyer to fill everything out, you had to do all these extra steps. So what I mean is, I would create my offer to purchase in here and my, agency and your basic forms, but they would also need to sign the seller's disclosure that was filled out by the seller. They would also need to sign the lead-based paint disclosure that was filled out by the seller. So there used to be all these extra steps. So let me show you. So obviously my buyer wants to get one email and fill out everything in Authentisign, sign everything, click finished, and he wants to be done with it, right? He doesn't want to get 4 different emails. So it used to be we'd have to go back into the listing, we'd have to get the documents, we'd have to save them, we'd have to then bring them into TransactionDesk to be able to send one email to our buyers and have everything signed. Well, I'm happy to say we eliminated that step. As long as the agent has added the seller's disclosure and lead-based paint disclosure to the MLS, they're going to show up right here for your buyer to sign with all the other transaction documents. So for instance, and I'll just kind of click this one open so you can see it, instead of me having to go find this agent's seller's disclosure that his seller filled out, it's automatically imported directly into my transaction. So all that my buyer has to do is sign this with the other documents. Makes it so much easier. And Tom, who's just a great agent, he actually puts a lot of great information in his associated documents. Like he'll put condo rules and regs. So I can forward those directly with my offer to purchase. So they can actually see if they can have a dog at that particular condo. He's really good about including like feature sheets that he does. I mean, especially for this $3.5 million home, right? He's got the whole feature sheet all prepared so I can easily email this with the other documents to the agent or to the buyer to sign. So everything is in one easy place. Instead of you having to go find those, We just automatically import them into the transaction for you. But this is great if you wanted to add, let's say you wanted to add that copy of that pre-approval, or you have pre-title. You can literally just click on the add, and there's two ways to do it. So if you, let's say, have, we're going to pretend this Helen flyer here is a copy of the EMD. I can simply drag that onto that blue strip, and immediately it's added. And by the way, you can add up to 20, so you can see it's right here. You can add up to 20 files at one time. So let's do that again. You can drag and drop onto this blue strip. But if you're not good at dragging and dropping, some people don't like that, you can also click on that blue strip, and that will take you to your computer, and you could pull in, let's say I wanted to pull in my pre-approval letter that way. Again, you can drag and drop, or you can simply click on that blue strip and you can pull those outside documents in. So remember, the hardest part of this is if you have forms. Forms are those pre-filled out forms that are already in TransactionDesk. You, the agent, are just filling them out. Documents are anything that's outside what's already prepared, like pre-title, like maybe you have a home warranty form that's not in there. Maybe you have assigned documents. All of those you can pull in by simply clicking on the add button and bringing them in. So since we're talking about that, as I mentioned, one of the things that I like to do is I like to bring in my offer, and I like to have that offer countered within the system, because it looks a lot nicer than if you picked up a pen and you crossed something out. It just doesn't look as nice. So keep in mind, I actually just got an offer in on one of my properties, so we're going to use that as our example today. So keep in mind, if you've got a paper offer, so this offer was actually just dropped off. So you've got a paper offer. How do I get it into TransactionDesk so that I can go ahead, mark it up, do the counter, and make it look a lot nicer than if I'm just taking a pen and I'm just crossing stuff off, right? So the first thing you're going to want to do is obviously you're going to want to scan your offer in. So I have a scanner behind me, I scan it in, and now I'm going to move that offer into TransactionDesk. I want to do that so that when I'm bringing that offer in, and thank you, Colleen, for letting me know. Yep, I'm actually showing something, so I'm just going to turn my screen on for a second, and then when we go back to our screens, I'll turn it off again, but thanks for letting me know. So when I'm taking this offer, I don't want to just cross everything out via pen, because then one, it looks terrible, and if I scan it back in, it's really hard to read. If I'm emailing it, again, it makes it just a little bit more difficult. So what I want to do is I want to scan this, and I want to pull it in, just like I just showed you in TransactionDesk, by clicking that add button. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. So what we want to do is we want to scan it in, and now we want to pull that in by clicking the add button. So I'm now going to pull that offer in, and I'm going to do a counter on it. So I'm just going to pretend for a moment. Here's our offer. We'll just grab this just for the sake of time. I've now added that in, and I want to counter it. Now, since I don't really have an offer right in front of me that I can just pull in, I'm going to use the one that's already here. So now we're going to open up our offer. I'm just going to pull up this preview so you can kind of see it. And there's a couple different tools that you're going to want to be familiar with when you're doing a counter offer. So the first one is if I'm going in, and let's say we'll use Jody again. Let's say Jody sent me this great offer, but you know what? My client doesn't want to leave the stove, the microwave, the washer and dryer, so I just want to cross that off. So right up here where you see this painter's palette, that painter's palette is going to give you tools for marking this document up. So I'm going to click on that painter's palette, and I'm going to blow this up so you can see it a little bit better here. Okay. So I'm going to go down to that particular line, and I'm going to use the strike through. And I'm just going to say, okay, Jody wants these, but you know what? My seller doesn't want to leave them. So we're just going to cross that off. And by the way, you can make these smaller or larger, and you can move them around. I have a little OCD, so I like them to kind of be perfect, but you can make them smaller or larger if you need to. You can also change the color. If you make a mistake, you can delete it. But really the goal is I just want to cross these items off so that they are not going to be part of my purchase agreement. Now, you do want to see your broker on what the policy is for using the strikeout. I know there's certain associations we vendor, so if you're part of a different association, some associations require you to not mark up the document, but to simply put it on an addendum where they can't have any strikeouts on their contract. My brokerage here, we just have to make sure everyone initials that change. So do check with your broker on what your policy is for that. But it gets better. Let's say that you want to point out you got them a 2-year home warranty. There is a highlighter feature so that you can highlight. You can do, big blocks of highlight. You can do circle highlights. There is the free draw. I have to be honest, I'm not kind of a fan of that one. Sometimes it's a little bit tricky or cumbersome to play around with. But there's also one other one you need to know, and that's when you're countering your price. So as we can see, we're offering $3 million here. Maybe I'm countering that price at $3.2 million. That's when we're going to go up and use our text box. Now, there's kind of a trick to this, so let me show you. When you're using the text box, I like to generally do my text box in an area where there isn't any text. I usually find a place that, there's not a lot of text. I can see exactly what I'm typing. I also have a little OCD, so I kind of like it to look a little bit more perfected than, just kind of laying it on top of each other. So let's say in this case, we are looking for $3.2 million as our counteroffer price. Again, I should ever be so lucky, but once I have this and I've put in what my counteroffer is going to be, you can see how awful that would look, right? I mean, you can read what's behind it. Just looks a hot mess. It doesn't match. Again, for someone with OCD, it would keep me up at night. So what you can do is you can actually change your font size, and that looks like about, I think, an 8 point, maybe a 9-point font. You can also adjust if you want it to be bold or italicized. You can, but here's the thing, even if I do that, look at how hard to read that is, because I'm just basically laying it over the other. So really what I want to do in this case is I want to change it from a transparent background to a white background. This is going to allow me to go in and adjust that box size now so I can fit it exactly where I want, so that it looks perfect and it doesn't look messy. So keep in mind, again, you can adjust these box sizes, you can adjust the font size so that it fits in there perfect. Then there's another tool in here. So your tools are right up here at the top. Just play around with them a little bit. I always tell people, write an offer on your own house so that you kind of get, as you're playing around with these, you can kind of see how the tools work. But there's another one that I really like. So I'm just going to close out of here so we can show that. So if I go back, and I'm just going to use that same purchase agreement for our demonstration purposes today, there's another tool called the Document Slicer tool. So this is really, because I'm in the car a lot and I'm teaching for different associations, many times I will send my buyer all the documents at once to sign. So let's say I send him his buyer agency, his agency for relationships, for your disclosures, basically, of what agency you're going to perform. Then you have your purchase agreement, you have your addendum. So let's say I've bundled all these things up with the seller's disclosure statement that the seller signed. I've now sent them all over to my buyer. So now I'm driving along and I realize, oh, darn, the buyer's agency is in there and it's got his cell phone number on it, his address, what he was looking for, the price he was going to spend. So documents that might be confidential to me, or maybe I have a higher pre-approval than I want to submit. So what I can do is I can actually use the Document Slicer tool, which allows me to go in and slice off certain pages or certain documents. So let's say that the first 5 pages are my purchase agreement, but these last 2 pages are actually my buyer's disclosure, my buyer's agency. And I don't want that disclosed to the other agent. I want to keep that private between me and the buyer. So really what I'm looking to do here is I'm looking to take this 7-page document and I'm looking to only share the 5 pages, right, with the agent. So let me kind of just show you. And basically, you're making a new PDF that you can now share. You're basically changing the PDF so that you're sharing just what you want. So I'm going to say I want to send the other agent, I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to send the other agent these 5 pages, but I don't want them to see my confidential documents down here. So I'm going to slice those off, if you will. So I'm going to hit the save button, and I'm going to say, I want to do a save as. Now, I always like to do a save as because I always want to keep my original intact, right? I want my whole package that he signed right to be in TransactionDesk. Everything's together, nice and easy. But I now want to be able to send Jody the counteroffer with just those pages. So I'm going to say, okay, I want to do a save as. I want to name it so I can quickly find it. And I now want to work with that document. So I'm just going to open up that saved document. So basically what I'm doing is I'm taking that 7-page document and I'm making a new PDF with just these 5 pages that I can email over to Jody. And I'll show you how to email it as well. So hopefully that makes sense. And it's really convenient, again, when you're on the road and you quickly want to be able to just send those documents and you might want to cut something out. So now on my documents, I have that counteroffer for Jody, and I could quickly go ahead and email this to her. So if I click that open, I can print it off. I can download that. I can upload it if I'm adding it to another transaction. I can also, as I go into my documents, I can also quickly email multiple documents over. So let me show you that too. So if I click on documents, if I want to email that to Jody, I'm just going to select what I want to email. I'll just say I want to email a whole bunch of these. I'm going to go into my basket. I could fax it. I could email it. I could delete it. I could print it. So you have all of these different options. You can even bundle, merge multiple documents together. So basically they're giving you all the tools that you need from wherever you are. So the last thing you want to do is have to go back to the office, print everything off, now scan in just the certain pages you want to send to the other agent. No, I want to be able to do all of that from my phone or from my computer when I'm out and about, or if I'm writing the offer at the property. I want to do it right there. I don't want to have to go back to the office and separate it all. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So again, just remember the difference between forms and documents is forms are there, they're prepared for you. Hopefully you have them in a great listing packet or a sales packet so they can all apply like we saw. And then documents are those outside documents that you're bringing in to be part of your transaction. So you're probably thinking, okay, lady with the fuzzy hair, we've now gone through all of that and you know, that's a lot of steps. Actually, if you think about what we did, if you break it down to be nice and simple, I showed you all the bells and whistles. But really, there's 4 basic steps. 1, we have clicked our easy button for the property. So remember our blue transaction button that launched the wizard in TransactionDesk, which we're adding in our dates, what our buyer wants to pay, and then we're going into our forms and adding anything additional. But for me, I don't want to have to use that wizard every single time. So as I mentioned, I don't want to have to click and click and click. Sometimes you just want to be able to do it from an easy dashboard. And that's what you're looking at right here. So everything that was in the wizard that we previously looked at, I want to do right from here. So for instance, when we added our contact into the wizard, if I wanted to add Billy Byer's wife, I could click on the plus, create a new transaction contact, and it's that same screen, but I'm doing it in the same places that I could add forms or documents. So here's how you edit. Now, in my opinion, TransactionDesk didn't really give you the best dashboard to start off with. They gave you like checklists and a couple other things on your dashboard. Here's what I recommend doing. Open up this lock on your dashboard and add in everything that's in your wizard. Like I like my contacts to be there. I like my forms to be there, my documents to be there. And I like my Authentisign box to be here. And here's why. If you put your Authentisign box here, and you do have to add it, doesn't come there automatically, everything your client signs for this transaction will go right back in this box and you can view it inside the transaction. Because of course, if they sign their purchase agreement, I want it to automatically go back into this file for me. And that's exactly what it does. All right, so how do you do that? Well, all you do is you open up that transaction dashboard. It's basically little tiles, and you're just grabbing the tile and dragging it onto your dashboard. Usually drops it right at the bottom for you, as you can see here, and you can make these boxes larger or smaller if you need to. If there's something you don't want, like your title order, just click on the X and remove it. Just remember, when you have those tiles exactly as you want them, to hit that lock button again so it doesn't shift around or change for you. And then you've got all of those things that we did in the wizard right from the dashboard. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. And again, if you joined us late, you're welcome to ask questions at any time throughout the demonstration today. Just throw them in the questions box of the GoToWebinar panel, which is usually over at the right side. All right, so we really discussed the doing an offer, but what if there's some information you need to add into your purchase agreement? Well, in order to go into the forms editor, all you're going to do is, in this case, because I have my forms right here, I'm going to find the particular form I want to edit. I'm going to click on it, and it's going to take me right into that form. This is where and this is called the Forms Editor. This is where you're going to check over all that auto population we just did. We're going to make sure everything looks right. But look how nice it is. The MLS number's imported for me, the agent brokerage, agent name, agent ID, email, the legal description, the address, all of that's coming over for me, the tax ID. Remember how we added those inclusions? You see how that's already filled out for me? So it's bringing over all of that important information so that I don't have to fill it in. However, there are going to be pieces, of course, that it's not going to know. So I'm going to have to obviously fill those additional pieces in. Okay. Up here under File, you can obviously save your forms. It does auto save too, so if you do lose your internet connection, you don't have to worry that all your changes have been wiped out. Of course, you can email or fax these documents from here. You can print them or remove them. If you messed up and you want to erase all the pages or just the page you're working on and start again, you can do that. And then I always get the same question, Colleen, if I got all the way to this point and I forgot a form, well, yep, you can click on New and add a form in. But then I get the question, Colleen, when would you ever copy a form? And for the longest time, I could not think of a good example. I just had it happen where I finally figured out where that is helpful. When you are doing a seller's net sheet, if you're like me, you might do a couple seller's net sheet. I usually do a low one and a high one in case we sell at this price or in case we sell at that price. So if you copy that, that will copy over your net sheet. And then you can just go in and tweak the price and the changes. Like my home warranty is always going to be the same price, so I don't have to change that. Or my company fee is, so it just saves me from having to start all over. All right, looks like we have a question. What is the watermark? Great question. The watermark is some agents like to give their buyer a form to kind of see what the offer is going to look like. This was kind of an old Floyd Wickman thing that he did a long time ago too. And the watermark basically places a confidential or a draft over the form so that they can't be used. But what it does is it allows you to share those then with your buyer. So I'll kind of show you an example. You see how it says draft across it? That's just if you wanted to show them a sample purchase agreement, but you wanted to ensure they weren't going to try to fill out that agreement or anything like that, or confidential. Maybe you're just sending them a confidential document that you want to mark it confidential so it doesn't get shared. That's what the watermark is. And then if you want to remove it, just hit the remove button. So really good question. Okay, you can change the fonts, you can change the colors, you know, nothing special there, but this one I really like, and most people don't even know it's here. By the way, if you've gone into your transaction desk and you don't have this button, that's because you've never made a clause or your brokerage hasn't set up any clauses. But let me show you what the clause button is used for. This is one of my favorite things, and most people don't even know it's here. And it's great if you are a broker and you are looking for a way to maybe mitigate some of your risk. Like my broker's always saying, Colleen, you're not an attorney, don't create legal language, just use what I got in my library. Well, that's really what the clause editor does. So let's pretend for a moment I'm filling out my purchase agreement and there's going to be seller's concessions. And my broker is very particular about how he wants that written. I can go to the clause library and I can see our office clauses. Or of course, you can create your own personal clauses. But maybe I'm saying I want all appliances to stay with the home after closing. And maybe I'm trying to find my concession language. You can see I have lots in here. Maybe we're asking for a home warranty to be added, but not to exceed this amount. And I'm trying to find my seller concession clause. Okay, the seller will contribute, blah, blah, blah. So I'm picking the clauses that basically I want to use in this box. I can then hit OK, and I'm using my broker language to actually fill this out. Looks like I spelled dishwasher wrong. So now I can go in and I can put in what were the amount of those clauses, or what were the amount of those concessions, but it's written in a way that my broker has already approved. So it's a really good idea. Or sometimes, quite honestly, I get something written and I go, oh, I love the way that sounds. And the next time I try to say it, I just fumble it and I just can't make it sound as good. This is a really good way. If you have it written perfectly, save that in your clause library. I'm going to show you how to do that in just a couple of minutes when we talk about our packages. And that way you don't have to keep recreating that lengthy legal language. You can actually just pop it in there. A lot of other people will say, Colleen, I find the forms editor kind of confusing because once I'm looking at the purchase agreement, how do I get to the next form? It's only allowing you to edit one form at a time so it doesn't get confusing. But when you're ready to jump to the next form, just click on the transaction forms button, and then you're going to pick on the next form title that you want to start doing the editing on. So you're just jumping from form to form, but you're doing that right here. So if that, I know I have to be honest, when I first started using those, that kind of bugged me. I kept hitting the back button and it was getting frustrating. So you can just jump from form to form, and then you can go ahead and fill it out. Okay, it does autosave. So again, you're going to have your basic editing tools up here. So if you need to cross something out or make a change, you can do that here. And that is the complete buy side. Now, on average, I'm going to be honest, it takes about 9 or 10 minutes for me to fill out an entire buy side package. You just want to make sure you do have your templates or your form packages already set up, and that really speeds the process up. I sort of showed you all the bells and whistles, so it sort of takes a lot more, but I want you to know what's there in case you ever need it. But now let's talk about the listing side. So the buy side, as I mentioned, is where we're always starting from the MLS, unless of course maybe it's a for sale by owner and never been listed before, but quite honestly, all the information is in the MLS on the buy side. So I really just want to click that button and pull it all over. But on the listing side, how would I know if I'm actually creating that listing? I don't know that all that information is correct. So even if it's been listed before, I kind of want to make sure I'm doing everything from scratch so I can put in the right legal description, the right information from the get-go. So in this case, I still don't want to have to fill out a bunch of information I don't need to. I want to pull from the tax records, but I want it to pull from a trusted tax record instead of another agent's information. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up to the top, and I'm going to click on the Add button. So I'm going to do basically what we did on the purchase side, but I'm going to do one extra step. So I'm going to say that we are listing 41539 Wessel Drive, and that's in Sterling Heights. Now, some people also like to put their client's name in, and that's okay, but if you sell Bob Smith 5 houses, how are you going to know which Bob Smith to open when you're trying to complete that sale, right? It gets kind of confusing. So if that's the case, I would do the address and then Bob Smith's name, just so you're not trying to open 5 different transactions to see the one you're looking for. Now, as I mentioned, the key to making this easy is applying your listing packet. Okay, so I'm going to apply my company listing packet, or you can make your own. But instead of pulling from the MLS, instead of pulling from MiRealSource as the MLS, I want to pull from the tax records. I want to pull from RealList. Now, this is, by the way, not going to pull in things like square footage, things like that. It's going to pull in the property record. So the first thing I want to do, and Brian, when he built this, he was so funny. He's like, all you got to do, Colleen, is now come in and put in the tax ID. And I'm like, Yeah, that's great. Agents don't memorize tax IDs. We know addresses. So I was like, oh, yeah. So all you have to do to make that simplified is you're going to actually click on the magnifying glass. But here is the most important tip. This is where I get numerous calls. Tax records are very exact. And if you put in too much information, I can almost guarantee you that you are not going to be able to use this tool. You only want to fill out 3 pieces of information. So think of it this way. Less is always best here. So for instance, under county, that would be important because that's how we're going to locate the tax record. So I'm going to say this property happens to be in Macomb County. And the only other fields that I'm going to fill in are the street number and the route street name. So for instance, this is Wessel Drive, but you're going to leave off the drives, the ways, the places, the courts, the avenues, because it will almost always screw up for you. It's too exact because let's face it, if you have drive DR period and the tax record has DRIVE, it's not going to match and it's not going to pull it. So you want to do the county, the street number, and the route street name. You're going to hit search tax data. Immediately it's going to find it. You can see how quick that was. You're going to check it off, hit select, and it's now importing all that information, but it does something really cool I want to show you. All right, so I'm going to hit create. It's not only beginning to grab that tax information and to start filling out my wizard, which we just did on the purchase side, but so you can see it's year built is there, address is there, the city is there, county, tax number, legal description, subdivision, all that stuff's coming over. But here's where it gets really good. If I jump to step 3, the seller of record has already been added too. And so if there's a husband and wife, they're both going to be there. It's going to pull those over, and even better, it's going to know where to tag the documents for the seller to sign. So it actually not only just pulls the seller's record, but it does something even better because it will put the seller's name under the signature line. Of course, you can edit that. If you do need to make a change, you can click edit or remove a seller. Maybe if it changed hands very quickly, maybe the old seller's there, not the new seller. I just had that in Wales up here. So you can actually go in and you can remove a seller or add an additional. But let's talk about another cool thing. And this is one of, I think, my favorite features, and nobody seems to know it's here. So I want to show you how you can send your seller's disclosures ahead of time and how it can save you. That's one of the things that's painful for me is when I have to sit there, for 40 minutes while they're filling out their seller's disclosure. It can be kind of long. So let me kind of explain, and I'm going to turn my camera back on just for 1 second to explain it. So your seller's disclosure is generally never, well, it's never supposed to be filled out by the agent, right? This is something that you are going to send over to the seller. The seller's then going to complete it. But what ends up happening is while I slip this in front of them, I usually say, okay, I'm going to go measure the rooms, and I come back, and inevitably there are 22 scratch outs because they didn't realize there's the not available, right? Or they didn't realize they filled everything out unknown and it's not available. And then they're in there trying to find their warranty on their roof so they can put it on here. And I, meanwhile, have measured the rooms twice and would love to be home. So here is a better way. Because we, the agents, are not filling this form out, what if I told you you could actually send this form ahead via email to your seller? They could simply open it up in their email, fill everything out, and hit the save button, and it would come right back to you. Well, that's exactly what happens. So I'm going to turn my camera off again here, but I just kind of wanted to show you. I would only do this, by the way, with the seller's disclosure form. Everything else, we certainly do not want them changing our land contract forms or our purchase agreement forms, right? We don't want them changing those. But this form is something that they always fill out. So for this form only, you can really send it ahead and allow them to fill it all out and hit save, and it comes back to you as the agent. All right, so let's take a look at that. To do that, you're going to go to File, and you're going to go down to send. And I'm going to send this via email to my seller. I'm also going to show you what it looks like when they get it, so don't worry. So I'm going to say I want to send my seller's disclosure statement, and I'm going to hit OK. There's only one difference in sending this and any other document, and that's that instead of sending it as a locked attachment, as you see here, I'm going to send this as a link, and I'm going to allow the seller to fill it out. And under the recipient name, I'm simply going to put in Sally Seller. She's going to be our seller today. And our recipient's email address. In my last class, I spelled my email address wrong. That was really bad because I'm waiting and waiting for the email to come, and it did not. So I'm going to double check that here. All right. So then you can put in your own subject line, like see you tomorrow at our listing appointment, whatever it happens to be. And it will even come with directions. If we're going to list the property tomorrow, then I want to make sure I'm getting it back by tomorrow. So maybe I want to use that as my expiration date. So I'm going to send it as a live link. By the way, if they make a mistake, they can change it. If you read something on the disclosure and you go, ooh, I think I'd like them to explain further, you can send the link back to them and they can make the change. It's a live link. So now all I'm going to do is I'm going to send this and they're going to get it. Now, the interesting part of this is that, let's face it, if TransactionDesk were to send this, they're not going to know who TransactionDesk is. They are not going to know who Authentisign is. They do know you as their trusted agent, right? So it's got to come from you so that they recognize it. And that's really what happens. It comes from you with your contact information. So let's actually see what they get. So I'm just popping open my email real quick. And I'm going to go to where it says, now you see it comes from me to the seller so that they recognize that I'm their trusted agent. It's not coming from Authentisign or TransactionDesk. And it says I'm offline. I hope that's not the case. Try to open that one more time quickly. All right, so when they get it, again, it's coming from you. It's showing your branding for your company. Down below, it has your contact information, and it simply gives them some basic instructions about you've been granted permission to fill out these forms. They click on the form, and it's an open and editable version of the form. So it's just like the forms you're filling out, except they're able to fill it out. And it's not complicated because the only options they get are save and print. So they can save and download a copy for themselves, but as soon as they hit save, because they might not have a way to get it back to you, right? As soon as they hit save, it automatically goes back to you, the agent, and puts it right back in your transaction so you can review it. Now you do also get a notification as the agent that that's happened. So let's say they went in, they're filling out the form, they make a mistake, they can unselect and check the right one. And each field is open for them. All they have to do now is go up, hit save, and that form is now coming back to you as the agent. And as you can see, boy, that was good timing. The agent, me, just got notified by TransactionDesk that Sally Seller opened up the form. So I now know I can go into TransactionDesk and see what she filled out into her seller's disclosure. So hopefully that made sense. I know I covered it a little bit fast, so if you have any questions, again, throw them in that questions box and we can go ahead and address them. There's another feature in here that I also want to point out when it comes to the listing side, and that is the data sheet. The data sheet is where you can fill out the information and upload it to Paragon. Most people don't know that this is here, so I'm just going to briefly show it. I'm not going to take the time to fill out a whole data sheet, so you're going to have to bear with me a little bit. But basically, here is the data sheet. And I'm going to be honest, I like the data sheet better because I think it's easier to read than Paragon personally. I like it that the features are all laid out. They're a little bit easier to select. Anything in red is required. I just think it's an easier read. But the last thing I want to do is go in and fill all of this out, then print it, then go hand it over to the admin and expect her to rekey 300 fields of information in without making a mistake, right? So you can actually send it to an admin, or if you put your own listings in, you can send everything you're putting on this data sheet directly to Paragon to start your listing. So I'm going to click the Upload Listing button. Now you do have to fill out the required information. And what it does is it actually creates a partial listing for me in Paragon. So I open up my partial listings. By the way, if you are an office admin, this is what it's going to look like. When you create these partials, the office admin can go in and see all of the partials that were created. So if you are asking her to add your photos or something like that, she can do that for you. If I just want to see my partials, I'm going to see all of mine as I open it up. And now I can go in, I can add photos, I can add disclosures, whatever I need to. So here's our Wessel right here. Now I can go in and add our photos, add our disclosures, any remaining information so that I can either save that listing as a partial again for up to 180 days, or I can save it and make it live. So here's where I would go in, I'd add my photos, my disclosures and things like that. I'd hit save, and now my listing is live in the MLS without me having to fill out a lot of additional information. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. All right, so lastly, you're probably thinking, okay, so we've covered the sales side, we covered the listing side, but of course you want to make your listing packets and your clauses. You're going to do that by going over to the gears to the left. And those gears are basically where you're setting up information or preferences for yourself. Now, I have to be honest, I love it when brokers make their own packages ahead so that if you've got 20 agents in your brokerage, the last thing they want to do is go in and make 20 packets, right? So brokers can actually make their listing packages or their sales packages for the agents. And it certainly keeps the repetitiveness. Plus, it makes sure that they're using the broker appropriate forms. So if a broker has mandatory forms that they want turned in, this ensures that that broker, looks like I'm having a little bit of a slower internet connection, it ensures that that broker has all the mandatory forms already set up. So I'm just going to go back in. Again, you're going to look for, as you go into Transaction Desk, right on the left-hand side here. I had quite a few things open there for a minute. I'm going to go over to the left-hand side. You're going to find those gears. And again, that's where you're going to find all of your preferences. This is where you can put in your branding. You can put in so if I go to my branding, I can put in my company banner. I can put in my logo, my picture. Make sure you don't screw those up and put your photo in the company logo, because otherwise it looks like somebody sent me something from Transaction Desk, and all I could see was about 2 inches of her forehead because she accidentally mixed these two up. So make sure you get them in the right spots. But then when you're on those same gears, this is where you can create your transaction templates and your clauses. So let's take a look real quick. If we go into transaction templates, I can click the add button. As you can see, I've got quite a few. And by the way, brokers who have set them up will see 2 icons that they're available for the office. So you'll see 2 people. If you set them up just for yourself, then you are the only one to see them. You'll see just that single entity here. But I'm going to go in, I'm going to hit add. And I'm just going to say, am I setting this up for my brokerage or for me? And then I'm going to give it a name. So let's call this Colleen's, and I like to call it Colleen's listing packet. By the way, if you're making this for yourself, it's a good idea to include your name, because if your office called it listing packet and you're calling it listing packet, now you can't figure out which listing packet was for the office and which one was for yours. So it's just a good idea to kind of insert your name. So I'm going to say that I'm going to call this my listing package. It's going to apply to residential listings. So basically, I've now named my package. If I go down to forms, I'm just picking, just like we did before, I'm picking the forms that I want to add. So I would go, in my case, I would go to my company specific forms that I have access to, and I would pick the forms that I want to be part of my packet. The best way to do this, by the way, is go in and grab your form packet out of your desk drawer and put that packet together in the same fashion. So, you open up your packet, and if it's in your packet, you want to make sure it's in your online packet too. You can also, by the way, add documents. So if you have a team selling form or you can even add folders. Maybe you have a home warranty form. You can add the home warranty file folder, and even maybe the brochure and the order form can go in there. So you can actually make these as detailed as you want. Okay. So lastly, so you've got a great purchase agreement done. You've listed a home. And I recommend writing an offer on your home, maybe trying to list your home paperwork-wise so you can see exactly how that process works. However, now you've got the documents all ready to go, and I want to send them for signature. The easiest way to do that is to go right over here on the left, click the pen or the signings button. This is going to show you everything you've ever sent out. So these are all, I use this in real life quite a bit. These are all of my envelopes, if you will. The best way to think of, I'm going to turn my camera back on just to kind of explain. The best way to think of Authentisign, because people seem to get really intimidated when it comes to e-signing, and it's really not hard, I promise you. The best way to think of Authentisign is think of it as an envelope. Okay, so what you're seeing on my screen, my signings are my envelope. Basically, what's inside of your envelope. But if you think of it this way, so here's all my documents, right? And they're going to go in the envelope, and we're going to send the envelope out. Same process. The hardest thing for people to really grasp about this is where are you sending the envelope, and are you putting the envelope in an order? Does it go to this person for signature first? Is it going to everybody for signature at the same time? So that's really the hardest part. So think of it kind of like an envelope. Each one of these signings is my envelope. What do I want to put in it? But we just spent all this time filling out, oops, upside down, filling out these documents, right? The last thing we want to do now is to go into a signing process and fill out the contacts and the document. We already did that. So because we did that step, the next process should be about 4 clicks, and it should be off and ready for signature. So let's take a look at that. All right, so we've got the add button at the top because we know we're going to be creating an action. This is the most important step. If you remember nothing else, if you decide to use Authentisign, this is the crucial step. Your signing name is basically what is going to be your subject line when they get it. So I would probably say offer or maybe PA for 205 Lakeshore. That was our example today. The most where it says optional, please never think that is optional. This is the most important step, and if you forget this step, you're going to create a lot of extra work for yourself, and you're not going to think this product is worth it. So let me show you. In your transaction, you want everything once it's signed to go back into your file. So I want to marry what I've called my envelope, what I put on the front of my envelope, to my offer. So these are all my transactions. I want to marry it to our 205 Lakeshore. That is the hardest part about what we're going to do, because it's going to bring over the documents, the contacts, and all the information that we just took all that time to fill out. Now I'm going to hit save, and basically what I'm doing is I'm creating my envelope and what I want to go inside of it. All right, so let's take a look. Before, you had to use a wizard, and it was kind of cumbersome. Now basically everything is open and ready for you on the right-hand side. But as I mentioned, if you did what we did earlier and you followed all those steps, this should be a couple of clicks. So if we click add our participants, we don't need to do anything except pull from our transaction because they're already there. Remember, it was Tom Lipinski's listing. I am the selling agent, and Billy was our buyer. Everybody's already there. But let's say in this case, I just want to send it to the co-oping agent when it's all complete. I don't want him to, he's not signing anything. Now, there is a way you can send it to everyone for signature if you already have a done deal and a meeting of the minds. But in this case, I'm just going to go nice and easy. We're going to say we're going to send it to Tom after it's all signed. So even though it says CC, this is not like CC on an email. When you CC someone on an email, it's just basically letting everyone see it. This says that it will only go to Tom Lipinski as a CC, he doesn't have to sign it, if these other parties have signed it. So there are 3 roles. The remote signer, which just means that they're signing they're getting it in an email and they're signing it. That's how most people are going to sign. The reviewer role, as I mentioned, is really for attorneys who have to acknowledge that they've accepted or rejected. And then last, there's that CC role. That's just going to them if it's all been completed. But here's the key. You have to put these in order, right? I don't want it to go to Tom before my buyer would be signing it. So I want to set the logical order of real estate, okay? So I want to say these 3 people are signing it, but who do I want to sign first? If I don't put them in any order, by the way, it's just going to send it to everyone all at once. And I certainly don't want Tom to get it before Billy has signed it. So here's the order I prefer. I want it to go to Billy first. Then I want it to come back to me because I have to, in our brokerage, we witness our contracts. Now I can go in and initial it or sign it, and I have one more chance to make sure I got all the initials and everything on the document. Then once it's done, and only at the end, it's going to go to Tom Lipinski so that he can present it to his seller. If I need to add additional people, of course, I can do that here too. Next, what documents, I'm just kind of following these tools down. What documents do I want to put in my envelope? Well, I have all the documents and the forms. I have both. Everything is here. Remember how I said we added those extra documents? Tom also has that great feature sheet, the seller's disclosure. Everything is already here. So all I'm really doing is picking the documents that I want my buyer to sign. So I'm going to go up and I'm going to say I want him to sign the purchase agreement and the agency disclosure, and I'm just picking the documents from the list. If there's additional documents you want to add, of course you can do that. And if you have a deal that died, but you still want to pull maybe the pre-approval letter in, you can do that from here too. But now we've got our documents in a row. Maybe I want to, again, have my agency disclosure be the first document. Then maybe I want my purchase agreement to be next, and then the seller's disclosure in lead-based paint, whatever it happens to be. Of course, you can add or edit documents, and if you use the arrows to the right, you can go in, and if you needed to use that form slicer tool, if you needed to remove a page, you can do that from here too. I can delete a particular page, or if an agent just sent you the offer upside down, you can even, and that happens, they scan them in upside down. I don't know how they do that, but you can even rotate a particular page or all the pages from here. Okay, so we've added our signer, we brought in our docs. What's last? Just simply tagging up where everyone's going to sign. So in this case, I know Colleen is going to be the selling agent. She's going to need to sign here. And I can even drag and drop my date onto the appropriate line. Now all I'm doing is saying, okay, Billy is going to be signing here. And I'm, of course, dragging the date onto the line for him as well. You can customize if you don't want the date to be added with the signature. You can double click on it and you can even choose what you want to be added there. And there's a bunch of different tools that they've added. You can do drop downs now. So maybe you want a yes, no drop down on a particular field. You can do that. There's also radio choice buttons. Most people don't know what that is, so let me show you. Let's say you are giving an option for a home protection plan. This is a good example. So I am letting them choose yes, they want a home inspection, or no, or a home protection plan, or no, they don't want to provide one. So if I made those optional, we know what would happen, right? They'd click them both. Now we got a hot mess because now we don't know, do they want a home protection plan or don't they? So what I would do is I would use the radio buttons because it only lets them choose one. They can choose yes or they can choose no. Now on my purchase agreement, as you can see, the purchaser is going to have to initial every single page. So instead of doing it one by one by one, I'm going to use the initial pages here. And I'm going to say that at the bottom right, I want Billy Buyer, sorry, to initial every page of the purchase agreement, or maybe it's just the first 6 pages. You can actually put that in. And I'm going to ask it to place the initials. Now, every page of the purchase agreement are going to be tagged for Billy's initials. Oh, I think I hit top right, but you get the gist. Now, all I have to do is move them into the appropriate place. So again, I can say that every page at the bottom right, I want Billy to initial my Keller Williams purchase agreement. And some have it, I think it's Century 21, I saw that had every other page that they were initialing. So the idea is now I can just move it instead of clicking on it, dragging it, putting it on the form. Every single page of my purchase agreement has Barry Buyer's initials. Okay, so just a couple little tips and tricks. It looks like we have a question. Drop Lipinski again. I don't know what that means. Drop Lipinski again. I don't know what that means. How to remove him. I don't know what that means. All right. So if I am now doing, let's say that I want to add a particular, if I want to add something like an email address, literally all you're doing is dragging and dropping it onto the form. So I'm simply going to drag and drop. There are markup tools. So if I got all the way to this point and I'm like, oh man, I forgot we're waiving that closing fee, I can still use those drag and drop tools from here. And then last, once you have everyone and their signature lines in place, you're just hitting that next button. And this is where you can put a custom invitation or a custom message for each party. So maybe I want to say, please remember to bring your copy of your divorce decree, or your please remember to bring your driver's license to the club, whatever it happens to be. You can put a personalized message in for each party. Even if you're CCing someone, you can just put a personalized message in there so that they get it. So if you're ordering title, that's usually what I CC. If I have a done deal and everyone signed it, I want it to go over to the title company or to the lender automatically. So I want to have that set up so it just automatically CCs to that party. Then lastly, all I have to do is put in my expiration date. You can push it out if that's too soon. And then I want to go ahead and hit send. Now my invitation for signing has been sent to Barry Buyer, and he can start signing those documents. So hopefully that kind of explained how the process works. Now, one last thing is I want to show you what they get. What does your buyer or seller get when the documents are sent? So I'm just going to, again, open my email real quick here. And let's take a look. So again, it's coming from you, the agent. It's now got all of the signature lines in place. Generally takes about 30 seconds. Let me hit my refresh button. I'm going to get it. Now I'm going to be able to go in and see that those documents have been sent. And by the way, when the client signs them, you are also going to get that notification that they've opened those documents and they've signed them. All right, so here is my email real quick. We're just gonna, so it'll take about 30 seconds. You're gonna go ahead and you're going to open up the email that was sent with the signing invitation. Again, it's coming from you, the agent, with your contact information. They're going to hit the start signing button. They can draw their signature. So the very first time they use this, they can draw their signature or they can use a pre-generated font. They do have to agree that it is a legal binding signature. And basically what it says is that it meets the UTA compliancy and the E-Standards Act. Then all they're doing, so here's where they can pick their signature, or they can draw their signature, or they can upload their signature. So they can pick how they want to sign. So we're going to say Billy Buyer is just going to use this on his phone because it's easy. And then they're literally being taken to every single place for sign. Now, I tell my clients to actually go in and read it first and then sign it because it's easier. So they can actually just scroll through read the whole thing, because otherwise it's kind of jumping them from signature to signature. Then they can pick those radio buttons. See how if I didn't want yes, but I did want no, it grays out the other. Just makes it a little bit easier for them. Then all they have to do is hit next, and they're taken to every single place until it's complete. So that is the entire process. Literally, they're clicking their way through to add their initials or their signature on the right document. They can hit complete, and they're good to go. They can print a copy or download a copy. It's completely up to them. So, all right. So if you have any questions, now is a perfect time to add those in. As I mentioned, we recorded this entire class. Thank you to everybody who threw out questions and also let me know that you couldn't see me in the beginning. So I appreciate that. We created a YouTube MiRealSource media channel. And you can watch all of our classes. I think the only ones right now we don't have up there are photos and roadmap, because those are two that we wrote that are proprietary to us. But everything else is up there. You can click on our playlist. You can see all of the classes here. So if you're looking on for a class on, let's say, listing entry, there are classes here. If you're looking for a class on Paragon Quick Tips, Debbie's done a great job putting all those together. So you literally just click on the playlist and you can pick from all of our class videos. And I think we have, gosh, I think we have over 100 now there of all different classes that you can see. Collab Center, Cloud CMA. I will have this class uploaded here shortly too. So you'll be able to go back and fast forward to any parts that maybe you missed or if you had to step away and take a call. All right. Thank you so much, Jody, for the kind words. Oh, you know what, Jody, I'm right with you on that. I also had to learn Command and DocuSign, but it didn't auto-populate enough for me. I just thought this was a way easier way of doing it. And also being with Keller Williams, that the Command is their platform, but when they looked at it, even they said, you know what, it really does make sense to do it the other way. You can still pull those documents into Command too, and that's what I do, but I want more of the auto-population. I don't want to have to fill out so much, so hopefully that did help you. So thanks so much for the kind words, everybody. Happy selling, and I hope you have a great day.